In this video, I'll look at rendering size and quality to get bigger and better looking renderings. There is one thing I need to fix. Here's a render of the scene as we left it in the last video. And it's pretty good looking except for the wall with the sign that says tracks A and B. It's a little hot. It's a quick fix. I'll press H for hit or select object by name and pick my sun, that free directional light. In here in the shadow density, 0.7 is too low. There's simply not enough shadow being cast by the outer shell onto that wall. So I'm going to put this density back up to 1.1. In another render, trying a region, we'll see that wall calm down. I'll move the region over and click Render. It's much better already, as I can see in the final gather. This wall is back to a reasonable color and has good shading across it, not nearly so blown out. Now for dealing with rendering size and quality. At the moment, we're rendering a 640 by 480 frame, and pressing F10 or clicking on the Render Setup button, going to the Common tab, shows us that size. What this says in the common parameters, which is common to any rendering engine we use, is that the output size in pixels is this big. We're rendering right now a single frame, but more if we'd like, and what are we rendering, which we've been doing a region. It also is a place to save out images, where we can scroll down and there's Render Output, where we can put a file out and name it, and choose a file type. What I'll do first then, is to get my render size set. I'm going to work at HD 720. I'll drop down under Custom, and there's a preset for HD TV. 1280 by 720 is the native resolution of YouTube and Vimeo, for example. So if you'd like to be able to show your work off in a quick animation and post it, this is a good way to go. What we can see here in doing that is that the area we're rendering changes. I've pressed Shift F to turn off and on the safe frame, showing me what am I actually going to render inside this yellow frame. And there's that region. I'll click Escape and make sure that safe frame is on. Now I know what I'm going to render, and I can look at the quality. I'll go over to the Renderer tab, and this deals with how Mental Ray thinks of anti-aliasing. I'll pull up my rendered frame window and take a look at some things. It looks pretty good, although there's some areas that need a little work. Aside from the lighting, there's probably some places that are a little jagged. What we're probably seeing is aliasing. An image produced by 3ds Max is composed of pixels, and these are in a grid, as you can see. Therefore, diagonal lines are blurred or interpolated between horizontal and vertical in different colors. They are anti-aliased. Aliasing, then, is stair-stepping artifacts that we see in a rendering. So I'm going to kick up my anti-aliasing a little bit, because I'm going to need it when I start doing a larger render. And it'll really be apparent in places like the tile floor here. Under Sampling Quality, I'll drop down under 1/4 and pick 1. Actually what this says is the minimum number of samples per pixel now is 1, instead of 1 per 4 pixels, with a maximum of 4. I'll use a box blur and leave the width and height alone. If you put a blur on something, say in an image editing application like Photoshop, there's different kinds of blurs available, and that's what these do, different algorithms for blurring pixels. I'll leave it as a box and see how it looks in a minute. The other thing to play with then is my shadow precision. Right now it looks pretty good, but if I need to go and make the glossy reflections, refractions, and soft shadows from these lights better, putting up a multiplier to increase their power, I can. For now though, this is a great way to start out, getting the rendering size set up and then at least a decent sampling quality, so everything is pretty good overall. Here's the other thing I'll factor in. When I work in Max, typically I'm going to render out images and take them into a compositing program such as Autodesk Composite. I'm going to render it out pretty good, knowing that later I'll blur the image using depth of field and probably motion blur, and also a glow on things that are nice and bright. So I don't want to spend a ton of time as long as it's pretty good looking. I'll get an image ready to save as an example, going to the Common tab and down to the Render Output section. I'll click on Files. And there's some tests I've done before. Under Formats, we can save out just about any format out there we'd like to work in. If you'd like to save out images, there's JPEG or TIFF. For rendering out a movie, here's QuickTime or AVI. There's some other formats such as Cineon for telescening film or working in a film pipeline. OpenEXR, developed by Industrial Light and Magic, is a flexible format for compositing. The Max Help is a good list of what these are and what they do. For now though, I'll render out a JPEG and put a name in. I'll call this Station Test. When I click Save, any particular properties that go with that format come up. In this case, I've taken my JPEG control and made the quality the best, the largest possible file, which is not a big deal at the moment, and best quality. I'll click OK and save. Now when I hit render, it will actually render that image and make it. It looks like I've forgotten to switch away from region. I'll hit Escape and make sure I drop down under Area to Render and choose View, and hit Render again. There goes the whole image. And in a few minutes, I'll see my whole train station rendered from that camera at 1280 by 720 with pretty good anti-aliasing. Once we've got the render size nailed down, we can look at things like anti-aliasing, the quality in our reflections and refractions if we have them, the quality of our shadows, and also the quality of our bounced light, which we'll do in the next videos.